We welcome you in to the Playbook here on WFAA Plus. Mike Leslie, Ed Werder here with you, talking about that Dallas Cowboys 33-16 win over the Las Vegas Raiders last night on Monday Night Football. You watched the game on WFAA, and the Cowboys had kept their season afloat. I don't know if I want to say necessarily saved their season, but at least kept it afloat and kept their slim playoff chances. The pulse is still there, even if just a little bit.
I think based on ESPN analytics, they improved their playoff hopes from 4% to 6% with that victory last night on the road, something they haven't done very often. They still haven't beaten a good team, but they did play well. I think you could argue, especially under the circumstances of the, Marshawn Kneeland death and the way what this team's been through, the turmoil and the emotions and the grieving process for the last week and a half, that they played exceptionally well, arguably maybe their most complete game of the year at a time when they wanted to do that to honor him.
Mm-hmm. It was. I mean, it was an incredibly emotional night from the moment they walked in the door. Dak Prescott very quickly coming out on the field, donning the special T-shirt that they had put together with Marshawn's face on the front. You could just feel the energy of the entire franchise. This was certainly not just the players. This was the entire coaching staff. Certainly Aaron White-Cotton walking in wearing Kneeland's jersey was, for me, maybe the single most powerful moment of, certainly at the very least, pregame. Obviously the moment of silence right before the game, seeing his jersey draped over the bench and the sideline. Those were also some real touchstone moments, certainly, of the night. But watching Aaron White-Cotton walk in wearing that number 94 jersey with Kneeland across the back, and you could see the emotion across his face. We're talking about somebody that worked as close or closer than anybody in that organization did with Marshawn Kneeland on a day in and day out basis. That moment spoke volumes about what this franchise is going through. And I think to be able to come out and perform the way that they did, again, they are very early on in the process of grieving the loss of Marshawn Kneeland, but I do think that performance was fundamentally helpful for all of them to feel like they went out and honored Marshawn Kneeland on Monday night.
And it didn't seem forced, like it seemed really genuine, I mean, the emotion of the whole thing, Schottenheimer, wearing the hoodie with his likeness on it throughout the game and then pointing to it as he was running off the field. And that was initially where his thought process was, and addressing the team immediately after the game was that you did this. You honored a player, a teammate you wanted to honor, and you did it in the right way. All of that was, really great and gratifying to see. And, there were so many things during the week while, we were both out there at the Star, but I still think that listening to Sally talk about his experience and, the fact that you can't escape grief and just that whole thing. And if we play the way he played and honor that, we'll be a better team. And I think all of that became reality last night.
Yeah. I mean, he spoke more eloquently about one of the most difficult topics that any of us have ever seen a team have to deal with in such a profound way. The immediate thought I had after listening to him talk about Kneeland's passing and the way that this locker room, this franchise in totality will deal with this, regardless of anything that Solomon Thomas does or does not do on the field this season, he may be the single most important offseason addition for this team just because of this moment. Obviously, George Pickens has been fantastic from an on-field perspective, but the impact that Thomas is having on this locker room in helping everybody because of, unfortunately, his experience in this space, and obviously Dak Prescott as well. The two of them have done just an incredible job of leading this locker room. And it really feels, because, I mean, even Dak talked about that. Again, this probably has changed since he said this, but he said earlier this week that he hadn't yet addressed the whole team. I think Thomas really did kind of take the lead on a lot of these things in messaging to the team, and obviously Schottenheimer as well, how to deal with such a profoundly difficult thing. His presence is amplified a million times over with what has happened over the last 12 days.
And it's remarkable because, he spoke at the candlelight vigil and said he wasn't sure he had earned that. He hadn't been here, all that long, and he wasn't sure that was really his place. And for him to do that, and for everybody to embrace the idea of him speaking on behalf of Marshawn Kneeland, of the team on Marshawn Kneeland, and then to take such a prominent place all week long in a game he didn't even play in and wasn't going to play in all week is, I think, equally remarkable and speaks to his value as a human being.
Yeah. In addition to all of that, the defense went out and put together certainly their best performance of the year. One, playing for Marshawn, but two, with a whole bunch of new faces, 5, 6 new guys out there on the field. Obviously, the additions of Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson coming over via trade, but the return of DeMarvion Overshown, the debut of the rookie Savone Revel. This is a very different looking defense, just insofar as there are different bodies on the field, let alone their performance on Monday night. That was a very significant step forward for this unit against a bad Raiders offense for sure, but something perhaps foundational for them to build some confidence off of.
Well, we've seen them play poorly against teams that we didn't think were significantly better than the Raiders, right? And they still haven't beaten a team with a winning record. They still haven't been over 500 this year. And so all of those things still are out in front of them, and they can take care of two of those things if they beat Philadelphia this week. But yeah, I don't think you can deny the performance just because of the opponent. Like, that's who was on the schedule. That's the only team they could impress us against. And they did. Like, Quinnen Williams took over the game very early. In the first half of his debut as a Cowboy, he basically accomplished more in 2 quarters of football than he did in 8 games with the Jets. Yeah. He had a season high, sack and a half. He had 3 pressures, season high, and he had 5 quarterback hits, a career high. And he amplified the performance of everybody around him. Yeah, it's not a coincidence. I think that 3 of the 4 sacks came from the starting defensive tackles. Kenny Clark was a different player. Oso Digizua was a different player. One of the things that really fascinates me, Mike, about the way this team's put together is most teams put a premium on the peripheral positions, on offense and defense, the edge rushers, the offensive tackles, the wide receivers, the quarterbacks, obviously. And the Cowboys are one of the few teams, if not the only team, that is making the biggest investment in the defensive tackle position. They're the only team in the NFL with 3 defensive tackles making over $20 million a year. Only the Patriots have even 2 defensive tackles making $20 million a year. And so it's been fascinating to see that. And I guess it's what Jerry said, as preposterous as it seemed the night he was explaining the Micah Parsons trade to Green Bay, and the fact that they wanted to get back a starting defensive tackle. And those were the teams that they approached first, and they got one in Kenny Clark. Although what they really wanted were the draft picks. Was him saying that that's where it's got to start on defense. We got to stop the run, and they've also proved these guys are versatile enough athletes that they can all play together. Yes. Whether it's a 4-man front, a 5-man front. I think Solomon didn't even play last night. He has position flex in that regard too. But Quinnen Williams basically coming in and saying, "Hey, you guys play the positions you want to play. You play what you're best at, and I'll take care of the rest." And he just created opportunities, I thought, for virtually everybody in the lineup. And maybe the one thing that you didn't mention that gets overlooked, and I'm as guilty as anybody, is maybe we didn't realize how important it was to have 2 veteran safeties in Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson in the lineup, because there weren't all the coverage busts that we're so used to seeing.
Yeah, no, those 2 being back, they're 2 guys that can be lightning rods for the Cowboys fan base a lot of times, but there is something to be said for, as you're saying, just the veteran presence and the wherewithal to not get beat over the top. They're neither of them is necessarily a guy that's going to go out and earn an All-Pro, but they do at least have that veteran presence, the understanding of the defensive structure, and the ability to not have those complete breakdowns as we saw for far too many games
Right.
over the course of this season. I loved what Oso Digizua said. I'm sorry, not Osa. What what DeMarvion Overshone said after the game yesterday regarding the presence of Quinnen Williams within the lineup, about how he is just allowing all of them, especially at the linebacker position, to just go feast,
Right.
because he told them straight up, "I got it. I'm gonna take care of. I'm gonna take care of two blocks. I'm gonna eat up bodies. You guys are gonna be able to run free and go make plays." And how freeing that is for a linebacker to hear that. One, the gumption, frankly, of Quinnen Williams to make such a comment and then go out on the field and back it up. But then as a linebacker, I mean, that is music to DeMarvion Overshone's ears, that he can just run free and flow to the football and go make plays. We're still learning. Last night was step one in the process of learning whether or not he'll have the same juice he had before this ridiculous knee injury that he suffered a year ago. But he looked pretty good first game out of the gates, and you give that guy with that kind of athleticism the ability to flow to the football with freedom, that can be very dangerous.
Well, I think when he got injured just about a year ago, I think it was December 9th, so we're just 3 weeks
Yeah.
short of that. If I'm not wrong, I believe he was second on the team in tackles and had 5.5 sacks. So he's really a dynamic playmaker. He's a big hitter. He's got unusual speed and quickness, and he's a dynamic guy who could do a lot of different things. And he incites the crowd. He gets the players excited. That can have an obvious benefit as well. But uh, let's hope he has some long-term health here, because his first 2 seasons have both ended prematurely with torn ACLs and worse. In the most recent case, he's only played, I think last night was his 14th out of a possible 44 games he could have played in his NFL career. So this is a guy who has earned the right to be healthy for a while.
And he's a guy that the players in that locker room love and want to see get this opportunity to be healthy. Dak Prescott had said it after the game, and it's rare that you hear a player say this sentence about anybody, any teammate. But Dak said, "He's my favorite player."
Yeah.
I don't recall hearing another player say that about somebody. Certainly, an active player say that about somebody
Especially the
on their
highest
own
paid
roster
player
or
in the game,
otherwise.
the highest paid player in football. I think Dak has a real respect for players like Overshone, who have an injury history from his own, rehabbing serious injuries. He knows the drudgery, knows the hardship, he knows the questioning your future and whether you're ever going to be the same player or have the ability to play again. And so when those players are as committed as he is to recovering from these horrendous injuries and getting back to being what they were before, I think that really earns the respect of somebody like Dak Prescott.
Yeah, no doubt. Somebody else who played a fantastic football game last night was George Pickens. Pickens and CeeDee Lamb filled it up yesterday in the stat sheet, but Pickens 9 for a $144 and a touchdown. Both of them didn't play that first series. We never did get much clarity from Brian Schottenheimer or Pickens or Lamb after the game as to the hows and whys of that. But credit to both of them. They came out after that and balled out and did exactly what you'd want them to do from an on-field perspective. What would you make of their performance and of that storyline that mushroom clouded real quick early on in the game, but then I think with the way that they both played, it kind of tamped it down a little bit.
Well, I think it's unfortunate that after all that the team had been through, coming off 2 losses, having to play a game on the road, that they also had to deal with 2 of their most prominent players not honoring team rules and not being fully committed to the cause for whatever reason. I mean, it was Las Vegas. Who knows what they could have been doing?
That's yeah.
There's more than one opportunity in Las Vegas when you're the visiting team and you're only there for one night. So I think it reflects poorly on both of them. I think it reflects poorly on them that they have not explained exactly what happened. If it was such a minor thing, why not just confess and own it? I think it speaks well of Brian Schottenheimer, a first-time head coach who is holding even his biggest stars accountable. And, they both had great games. I mean, 210 yards combined, each had a touchdown. So it was their best game as a tandem, but it cost the team a possession. And there's no telling how many possessions you're going to get or how important each one is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, listen, it was, and it's interesting because, like you said, it's Vegas. It would be maybe not defensible, because you're right. I mean, you're costing your team a possession, but it would at least be on some level understandable if what had happened, and this is just conjecture, this is not based on any reporting, but if what happened there was they missed curfew because they wanted to go out in Vegas, and holy smokes, has this team ever been through a lot over the course of the last 2 weeks? It would be understandable if anybody in that organization said, I just need to go blow off some steam and have some fun doing something tonight.
Yeah.
I get that. That makes some sense just on a basic human being level. Raising my hand as somebody who went out on Sunday night, but no, I didn't have a curfew. I didn't have a game to play the next day. But like, and believe me, I wasn't alone in that.
So that's why you were doing
that's
why you were doing television from a casino. Okay, I got you. You hadn't gone back to your
all
room.
Paul Melton. You can blame Paul Melton for that one. But listen, and yes, to your point, why not? If that's all that it was, why not just say that last night after the game? Hey, we stayed out a little bit later than we should have. We
lost track of time.
Yes,
didn't realize we had that meeting. Not going to happen again. Regret that it did this time.
And maybe they'll say that on Wednesday or Thursday, perhaps. But yeah, it would have been a very easy thing to just, because I think if they said that after the game, it squashes it, and we're already kind of moving on at this point, rather than having it have to come back up probably on Wednesday or Thursday when each of them speak. So it's a storyline. I don't think it's the biggest storyline in the world.
You never know. You might get a can of nuts out of this.
Listen, I'm not trying to go. Hard pass, thank you. But what did you make of both Jerry Jones and Brian Schottenheimer over the course of the last 24 hours talking about the concept of perhaps a long-term deal for Pickens and having him stick around for? He's certainly playing like a guy who they would want to keep around.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Jerry Jones said after the game that he could definitely envision a scenario and almost seemed committed to the concept of signing, keeping Quinnen Williams, keeping Kenny Clark, keeping George Pickens. And to be honest with you, like, if they're great players and you gave up assets to get them, why do you only want to keep them here for what might be a lost season, right? I mean,
right.
The whole point in getting great players is to keep them on your team for as long as they're that. Right. The fact that Brian Schottenheimer was emboldened to put it out there that, hey, put me down. I want George Pickens back next year. To me, that suggests he knows Jerry's wants to do it and is in all likelihood going to move in that direction, because I don't think Schotty would want to publicly contradict Jerry Jones he's 3 months into his first head coaching job.
Right.
And he wouldn't want to contradict the front office on something where it involves a huge financial investment. And I think Pickens has earned it. He's had a couple of penalties recently that reflect kind of the behavior we saw at times in Pittsburgh that eventually drove Mike Tomlin crazy. But he's performed. He's surpassed expectations with what he's done on the field. And I'm going to say this. I fully believe that he convinced Dak Prescott during those 3 or 4 games CeeDee Lamb was out that he is a legitimate number one receiver. I think Dak had some question about that until he actually experienced that period of time.
Yeah.
And I think Dak will be open-minded this offseason if it'll get a deal done and keep Pickens here to modify his own contract. And maybe after his experience in Pittsburgh, despite the fact he has David Mulugheta, who obviously insisted on, Micah Parsons getting a record-setting contract for a non-quarterback, and he'll be in a position to do that again here. Because Pickens legitimately could make the case for he should make what CeeDee Lamb makes, right, or more, which is $34 million a year. The franchise tag is an option at $28 million. You might not be that happy with that situation, and that doesn't achieve your goal of securing him long-term. But I could see maybe a situation where Pickens recognizes the value of playing, for this play caller in this offense, for this quarterback, and having, CeeDee Lamb take a lot of attention, create a lot of opportunities, and maybe be willing to do something that leaves a couple $1 million a year on the table.
Yeah, because listen, we are talking about a guy who had something of a reputation coming out of Pittsburgh. It was probably a mixed reputation, because obviously he did some things on the field that created value and that led the Cowboys to want to trade for him in the first place. But there were questions about whether or not he was a team guy. There were questions about whether or not he'd be willing to block downfield. There were clips that went viral over the course of his time in Pittsburgh of him maybe not competing on every snap. I think a lot of that he has shed this season. Maybe not all of it, because like you said, there have been some penalties that personally I don't really see the need for jumping and hugging the field goal post.
We just saw
a penalty.
A wide receiver get punished for that the other night. Penalized for that the other night.
Well, and that's exactly where I'm going. Like, I don't think it needs to be a penalty, but it is very obviously a penalty. He got penalized the night prior in the Lions-Eagles game, so it wasn't like he didn't know, or he certainly should have known anyway, that it is a penalty. So there have been some artifacts of that, but really not that many.
Yeah. Nothing that would make you say this player's not a winning player. He's not committed, right, and I don't want him to be part of my program going forward. I now know why the Steelers traded him. There's been none of that.
Yeah. You piqued my curiosity a couple minutes ago when you started talking about Schottenheimer and his interaction with the front office. And when he was hired, one of the things that we heard a lot from the fan base was, oh, Jerry didn't want to go hire a Ben Johnson or an Aaron Glenn or what have you. All he wants is another puppet, and this is his puppet. It doesn't feel like Brian Schottenheimer is playing puppet so far with the way that he is leading this football team, with the way that he interacts with the locker room, and with his willingness. And to your point, maybe he has some, knowledge of some conversations with Jerry that he's already working down this path, or at least thinking down this path. But it does feel like he's comfortable enough in his own skin that he's willing to, you know what, if I think something, I'm going to say it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't know how he felt about the Micah Parsons trade, even though Jerry said, it was a unanimous vote. Maybe Shotty didn't get a vote. I don't know, for it to be unanimous. Maybe it was Jerry, Steven, and Will only. But I would think that in a situation like he dealt with, last night with these two prominent receivers that he wanted to discipline, that he had to get that approved by Jerry and Steven. And Jerry, I would think, might have some apprehension about that. Like, nobody knows about this. Why do we have to put the game in any kind of jeopardy whatsoever? We really need to win. And he prevailed. I assume it was he initiated that. And he's talked about holding people accountable, and he's a different personality. He is obviously very close to his players. We see that in his interactions with them before every practice, the music, that he dances as much or more than they do on the practice field. And so sometimes I'm like, including like last night, after he disciplines these two guys, they have great games, they're sitting on the bench together, and he goes over and starts, playfully interacting with them. I'm like, was that what Jimmy Johnson would do under that circumstance? Is that what Bill Parcells would do under that circumstance? And it's like, well, there's different ways to win, right? Different ways to coach and approach people. I don't think he's necessarily been a total pushover, because I think that he had a little leverage in taking the job, not because he had other options to go be a play caller somewhere else. In fact, Mikey thought that's what he was going to do. He'd already left here. He thought McCarthy was going to get extended, and if that happened, he didn't want to be on the staff because he wanted to go call plays again, and he had other opportunities to go do that. And so he was surprised when they called him back and said it wasn't going to work with Mike. Would you be interested in the job? And he would only be interested in the job, of course, if he could be the one calling the plays for the first time here.
Yeah. So let's look forward now for this team. Philly, KC, Detroit, those three at the very least still look awfully daunting, although there's a case to be made with the Chiefs and Lions that they're not playing at their optimum level right now. Vikings look less daunting. Chargers look less daunting, but it's still a 5-game stretch where you're playing good football teams week after week after week.
Well, I think all of the teams that they still have on the schedule, only the Giants didn't make the playoffs last year. And obviously, you're playing the two Super Bowl teams from a year ago in the next 2 weeks. And I think the Philly game sets the tone for the other games. Yeah. If they can beat Philadelphia, if they can play like they did last night on, a short week of preparation, a really physical team. Yeah, they've got some injuries. They haven't played that well on offense. Maybe they're a little more vulnerable than everybody thinks they are. But that would be huge, I think, for them. A team that's beaten a bunch of, teams that have won 3 or fewer games. That's every team they've beaten is a team with a losing record, and not by any narrow margin. They're
Yeah.
the worst teams in football. And so if they would be able to beat the defending Super Bowl champions and the team that right now has the number one seed, that would be significant, and I think could alter their psychological approach, their mentality, their belief in playing those next few games after that. And I mean, Dak Prescott's got a great record, in the NFC East. He's got a great record in the NFC East at home. I think only Tom Brady's won more consecutive games against division opponents than Dak's 18. I think Tom Brady won 20 in a row at home. So he's in that ballpark. So this is a huge game for them this week.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. Dak Prescott at home against an NFC East team, and frankly, particularly against the Eagles. He's been very, very good in that space. Now, the Eagles haven't always been the defending Super Bowl champions and have the roster that they've got right now over the course of that span, but that's been a setting where he's been really good in his career. And if they can win that game, get themselves back to 500, now there does start to be a swell of confidence, I think, in the locker room. And I think if they win Sunday against Philadelphia, get themselves back to 500, get themselves more squarely into the NFC playoff hunt. Although I went through the little ESPN playoff machine. I went through and did this the other day. They can go 8-0 the balance of the season, 7-0 with what's remaining, and still miss the playoffs. That's how much ground they have to make up. Now, obviously, that would require everybody above them to finish the season very strong, but that is possible for them to go perfect the rest of the way and still miss the playoffs at what would be 10-5 and at 11-5-1. But I think if they beat Philly on Sunday, with everything that has happened to this team, with the passing of Marshawn Nealon, with the way that they have responded to it, with the performance that they put on the field against Vegas last night, and if they go beat Philly, I think then there starts to be a little bit of a groundswell of, hey, is there some team of destiny type thing happening here? And that, can maybe be just one extra surge of momentum behind this team, perhaps. They've won one of the 7 or 8 games that they need to win. So, but it's there's a whole lot of ifs right now with this team still.
But some of these players, including Dak Prescott, have had that experience, right? They had that happen in 2018 when they were 3-5 and they traded for Amari Cooper and they didn't win out, but they came pretty close. They wound up winning the division that year. Now Philly wasn't as far out in front of them as they are at the moment, but they also experienced it to a lesser degree 2 years ago when they won the division when it seemed inevitable Philadelphia was going to win it because Philadelphia lost like 5 or 6 games in a row at the end of the season and then got bounced out of the playoffs in the first round. And the Cowboys wound up with the 2nd seed, which seemed unthinkable. So these guys have an experience with overtaking this team in situations where that did not seem possible at certain junctures in the season.
Right now, Dallas technically 4.5 and 5.5 when you consider the tie, puts them 3.5 games back of Philadelphia. That's a lot of ground to make up in 7 games time.
And Philadelphia's beaten good teams, right? Philadelphia's got some real quality wins. Dallas certainly does not have that.
Yeah. San Francisco holds the last playoff spot right now at 7-4. So that would put Dallas at, trying to do quick math here, 2.5 back in the win column, 1.5 back in the loss column of San Francisco. So effectively 2 games back of the 49ers. It's still a daunting task for this team to actually find their way to the postseason, but it's not impossible, at least.
I'll bet you if they go 11-5-1, they're in.
They would certainly deserve it if they do that, but that would require beating an awful lot of good football teams between now and then, for sure.
But it's their own fault. I mean, they didn't do what they were supposed to do in the easy part of the schedule, and that's on them.
If you simply beat Carolina and beat Arizona, the scenario is entirely different. 2 very winnable football games, win those 2, and you're right there in the thick of this. You'd be 6.5 and 3.5 and half a game out of a playoff spot, effectively in a tie with San Francisco for the last playoff spot. That's the margin, unfortunately, for this football team. We are out of time, but Ed Werder, thank you as always. I appreciate it. This was fun. I appreciate you having me on here. I haven't had a chance to do this yet.
It is. It's a fun show. The half hour goes fast, and it's pretty free form, and enjoy doing it with you, Mike.
Likewise, likewise. Thank you all for watching. We will have obviously coverage of the Cowboys all through the week on WFAA, and we will see you there.